Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Fazbear Entertainment would like you to put your hands together for the one, the only, Freddy Fazbear.
Rewritten! Content warning. This video is not made for kids. It contains fictional depictions of mental illness, fictional violence, and fictional abuse. The fictional characters in this story are heavily afflicted by the things that I have spelled out to you, and some of the inner monologue seems to suggest that they should be getting hurt like this, but that is absolutely not the case. Me portraying this abuse or mental illness is meant to show the audience how the illness or abuse feels inside of the mind of the afflicted person, so they can sympathize and maybe stop themselves from following a similar pattern in the future. Be careful if you are easily triggered. You're most likely about to enter the mind of someone who is heavily afflicted by illness and abuse. Viewer discretion is advised. Everything had to be perfect. That phrase just kept running laps around Roxy's head, refusing to retreat into obscurity. Everything had to be perfect. It had to be perfect. It had to be. She had to be quicker than them. She had to be smarter than them. She had to be better than them. Roxy turned a corner, only to be faced with a corridor that looked exactly like the one she had just left. The dark walls were traced with harsh neon greens, pinks, and blues that hummed with the same glow that her specialized armor reflected. The black carpet usually softened her paw steps, but today she could feel each one pounding up her legs like the strikes of a sledgehammer. She wasn't even running right now, which made her unsteady pace even more pathetic. A step, step, stumble and recover, step, step and trip, uneven, so uneven. Her head jostled with each mistake, making it even harder for her heavy eyes to keep track of how close the walls were to touching her. She whacked her bangs out of her face, her canine jaws parting to take in increasingly labored breaths, but no matter how much air she pulled in and out of her mechanical body, it made no difference to the heat that stuck to her like a layer of biting leeches. Come on, keep walking. She had only just completed her 8th match of the day. She couldn't falter, she had to keep going, just like she practiced. "Marco," she called, trying to keep the ragged tightness out of her voice. "Polo!" a tiny voice squeaked back, to the left. Her ears twitched a bit as she tried to figure out whether she should take this left or the next left, eventually choosing the first one. This was a routine that she had grown used to after each laser tag match. The place was big enough that the kids sometimes got lost, so after each round she would have to play Marco Polo to retrieve them and take them back to the exit. This process was so much easier when she could see them through the walls. But no, she didn't need those eyes. She was completely fine without them. She was doing great. They probably hadn't noticed her drop in skill yet. Roxy rubbed at her forearms, picking at the studded bands that clung to her wrists. Come on, keep walking. Don't slow down. You don't need rest. You're fine. You're a machine, for goodness sake. Machines don't need sleep. Marco! Polo! This time, the kid was much closer. She turned the corner and saw him. A little boy with black hair was climbing over one of the foam-padded beams, laughing despite the sweat that drenched the front of his soccer t-shirt. "Roxy!" He ran up to her and she took his hand, focusing hard on making sure that her paw wasn't shaking, lifting her head and calling, "Okay, is that everyone?" She waited, but there was no response. She had already counted that this kid, Ethan, was the last one, but she still had to yell for any remainders just in case she had made a miscalculation. As she navigated through the maze, she tried to keep her tail from dragging, forcing her drooping ears to stay pointed skyward. Come on, straighten your posture. You're not tired. You're not. What was the paint on her face smudging? The usual stinging of the claw marks was getting more distorted in her mind's eye, and she swore that she could feel a drop of it trickling down her chin. Darn it, she had to check once she got a few seconds alone. What if Pierce sees? What if he says something? No! So what? It didn't matter what that idiot saw. She was not going to feel bad about it. She wouldn't. He was not allowed to do that to her. When the entrance came into view, Roxy began to pull up all of her defenses, making absolutely sure that she would not change her expression no matter what he said. She dropped Ethan off in the small room that preceded the lobby, letting the kid hang up his vest on the wall where all the other laser tag equipment was kept. What took you so long? There he was. She knew Pierce was looking at her. She knew that he was examining every little detail. He was about to say something, wasn't he? He was about to... Whoa, what is happening with your eye? Did they repair it right? The disguised jab made Roxy's fur bristle with irritation. She shot him a glare, fighting the urge to take a step back from him. Not afraid, not afraid. Pierce took on the appearance of someone who had never grown up past high school. He was the youngest of the animatronics managers, a half-developed mustache clinging to his upper lip like a deep-fried cobweb. His blonde hair shone an obnoxious white under the black light of the laser tag arena, his style consisting of swiping his bangs over his eyes like he thought that made him dark and mysterious or something. Roxy held his gaze determinedly, the crimson of his contacts too neon and artificial to properly match the rest of his human body. Was her face dripping? Was he making things up, or was he just trying to bring attention to that flaw because he knew that it would embarrass her to point it out? Pierce leaned out of the exit and then drew himself back in, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his vermilion varsity jacket. He was making that stupid face again, the face that made her insides curl in disgust. Well, it looks like we have some free time before another group wanders in here, Pierce said, prowling closer to her, closer and closer. Roxy did her best to keep the fear out of her posture, whisking herself back through the entrance of the maze, closing the door with a heavy clank. The sound of Pierce's snorting chuckle made her dig her claws into the plastic of the door, her tail twitching and curling closer to her body. Oh, come on, it was just a joke, he called, muffled through the door. She didn't want to deal with him today. Why did he always have to do that? Her eye, what if it was... She opened her stomach hatch, drawing a small hand mirror out from behind the first aid kit. She removed the new visor and made her markings glow bright enough for her to see her reflection properly. Oh my god, Pierce was right. Anxiety burst inside of her like a grenade, and she hurriedly tried to rub the lines of black paint back into place. Every time she lifted the lime green pads of her paws, a new smear would materialize, making her swipe over it again and again and again. The raw, opened wounds where she had tried to reshape the outline of her eyes burned as she pressed the ink deeper into them, and she chewed on her own tongue to keep from making a sound. When Gregory had shot her in the eyes, the melted plastic of the overheated sockets ruined the original face that she had been wearing for years now. The technicians had ordered and applied another new face, this one, and sent her on her way. When she was locked in her room during the police investigation, Roxy had been tormented to discover that her face had been reverted back to how it was before she had filed it down to fit her standards. She had to claw at the imperfections all over again, desperately trying to restore what little dignity she still had, biting down on a towel so the others wouldn't hear the pain being vocalized. But she had to fight through it. She had to. Everything had to be perfect. Even now, when she thought that she had finished fixing everything, her ugliness was still reflecting right back at her. Her nose was too big. Her chin was too prominent. The shape of her eyes was uneven, one coming to a point too narrow for the others to replicate. And her cheeks, they were too boxy, the glowing fox stripes on her face all different sizes. What if somebody noticed? What if they all started laughing at her again? She wished that she could go back to her room where the paint buckets were, but she knew that she didn't have much time before another group would arrive. A jarring series of pounds from the door nearly made her drop the mirror. She fumbled with it and slammed her stomach hatch closed, hearing Pierce warn her, "Hey, we got some more! Get out here!" Roxy took a few moments to collect herself, puffing her chest out, straightening her back, forcing her expression to lose the anxiety that was pulling at her wires. When she stepped out, she was met with the faces of 8 little boys, faces that she recognized. Oh, great. It was Daniel and his friends. There she is! The ones that weren't preoccupied with putting on their laser tag vests began to give a mocking clap, laughing and elbowing each other and pointing at her. Roxy set her jaw, hyper-aware of every movement that she made, trying to show them that she wasn't bothered. She didn't care. Look how much she doesn't care. They were just stupid little kids. Out of nowhere, Pierce crossed the distance between them and put an arm around her waist. "All right, are you all going to be gentle with her this time?" Pierce said with a smirk that was far too wide to be passed off as genuine. Roxy tried to twist out of Pierce's grasp, but her attempt to get away only made him snicker like it was some sort of joke. Roxy awkwardly stood in the corner of the room, taking a step back every time Pierce tried to get too close, every detail of her face blazing as she tried to bear through it and act like she wasn't uncomfortable. And of course, out of all the various setups that could be played in this arena, Daniel and his friends chose the one where it was all of them against only Roxy. The setting usually meant for children as young as toddlers. These kids showed up every week to do the same exact routine. But she was going to be faster this time. She was going to be better this time. They were not scarier than Vanessa. "All right, go easy on her," Pierce called as Roxy led the group of whispering boys into the arena. She turned to close the door, but immediately yelped in pain. Roxy snatched her tail out of Daniel's grasp, snapping at him. "Hey, that's against the rules, you jerk!" "You hear that, Daniel? It's against the rules," they mocked. Before she could think of a reply, the boys had scattered in all directions, giggling like imps. Roxy clutched her tail close, kicking the entrance shut, the noise of the announcement speaker taunting her as she waited for the game to start. She wasn't supposed to move from the spot until the game had begun, to give the kids an advantage. But she knew that what they were planning in this time was far past just leveling the playing field. "Just don't react," she began to coach herself in her head. "Just don't react. Keep your chin up, keep your shoulders square, don't tremble, don't." 3, 2, 1, go! Roxy charged down the closest hall, the one that she had seen most of them sneaking into. She kept her blaster gun clutched tightly, adjusting her visor to make sure that it was secure. Gregory had proven to her on the 28th how vital the visor was for matches like this. Just like the technicians warned her, all that concentrated light focused on her optics and literally caused them to overheat so much that they popped like old light bulbs. And if Daniel and his friends found out how to do that, she was certain that their games would get hundreds of times worse for her. The sounds of giggling and whispering drifted around her, making her slow down. She tilted her head to locate which direction they were going, but was distracted by an odd effect that had overcome her vision. When she moved her head, the outlines of the walls blurred and doubled, swinging back and forth like she was standing on the deck of a ship out at sea. She reflexively placed her paw on the wall, trying to steady herself. She checked the time. It was only 10:05, and her body was already aching. She trained so hard for reopening day. But when had she last slept? She had lost count of how many times she had to lie to Freddie and Chico when they came to check up on her. She tried to shake that off. No, she was not weak, she was not slow, she was not tired. A sudden yank on her tail made her cry out. Roxy whipped around and the kid went scampering around a corner, laughing the entire way. "Hey, get back here!" She pursued him, her claws digging deep into the carpet with each stride. She shot at him multiple times, but every blast missed. The stupid kid wasn't even a little afraid of her. He just kept laughing and shooting her back, one of the kid's shots reflecting off of her visor. He was running so fast. So ridiculously fast, it was unbelievable. It took her an embarrassing length of time to realize that it wasn't the kid going faster. It was her going slower. Roxy wanted to keep on going after him, but her stride grew shorter and shorter, her jaws hanging open as she struggled to catch her breath. She eventually staggered to a stop, a red haze gathering at the corners of her vision. He was right there, only a few feet away, and she missed every shot? Every shot? What was wrong with her? She checked her battery percentage and was stunned by what she saw. She was only at 11%. How was she at 11%? When was the last time she charged? Her memories of last night were foggy, and the nights before that. All she remembered was training, zipping back and forth across the maze, shooting the different pillars, trying to regain her skills to prove to herself that she didn't need her X-ray eyes to win the matches. And now... Roxy shook those thoughts off. She was a robot. She could take it. She didn't need sleep. Her ears twitched and swiveled as she tried to track down the sounds of the scurrying kids. She picked up at least 3 on the right, 4 further down a few corridors on the left. She checked the mental map of the maze in her head, aware of an intersection up ahead. When she picked the path on the right, she nearly jumped out of her fur as speakers blasted the announcement.
Team Red has taken Team Green's first goal point.
She hissed a censored curse, doubling back and charging in the direction of the goal point they had taken. However, after only a few meters, her legs had grown so heavy it felt like she was trying to walk through 10 inches of leaking sewage. She slowed a little, gasping for air, the hollow weakness in her limbs digging deeper and deeper inside of her, all the way down to the structure of her endoskeleton. No! She shook herself and forced her body to work harder, speeding up again and ignoring the fiery pain that was shooting through her pistons. Come on, come on. She was used to pulling all-nighters. She could push past it and prove to them that... A loud blam shocked her out of her thoughts, her markings briefly flashing a bright red to signify that she had been shot. Roxy didn't have the time to turn her head before she flashed red again and again, fumbling with her blaster the entire time. The laughter of the kids echoed through the halls, their tiny pattering feet scrambling away and over the various obstacles. Ignore them, just ignore them. Roxy continued struggling towards the goal point, taking a few more lefts and rights, finally narrowing it down. Just as she broke out into an open space, her foot caught on something and she took a tumble. The rocking of the rope bridge was immediately recognizable to her. She scrambled back to her feet as fast as she could, but still, it hadn't been fast enough. Did you see that? Several of the kids were giggling around the edges of the rope bridge section, but she just growled at them and kept going, forced to take more careful, precise steps to keep herself from falling off the rope bridge. Sure, the padded floor beneath it ensured that no harm would be done, but she would still look really dumb if she fell twice. She kept her head down, trying to control her breathing so she wouldn't look so worn down after only 5 minutes in the match. Her insides burned with the need for more air, but she restricted it as tight as she could, becoming terribly aware of the shape of her spine, her ears, even her shoulders and waist and legs. But the more she focused on looking skilled, the more she slipped and wobbled along. The outlines of the bridge beneath her were turning red and doubling, swaying in all the wrong ways as she tried to retain her balance. Just before she made it to the platform where the goal point was, she made a misstep, hitting her elbow hard on a pole that was holding the rope bridge up. Another burst of laughter behind her made her embarrassment grow, and she tried to recover as fast as possible and shoot at the goal point. However, even though she was only 2 feet away, nothing happened. The goal point was still shining a bright red, signifying who it now belonged to. Oh, wait. She felt especially stupid now. They had just shot her only a few seconds ago, and getting shot disabled her blaster for a whole minute, according to the game's rules. It had to be almost over, right? She was trying to keep her attention on the goal point, but the kids were whispering at the edges of the rope bridge, giggling at her as she waited impatiently for the timer to end, saying all sorts of things about her, telling each other how stupid she looked. God, stop looking at me, you creeps! Roxy snapped over her shoulder. Don't you have better things to do? I don't know, don't you have better things to do? One of them called back. What does that even mean? The timer had gone off by now, so Roxy raised the blaster and began shooting at them, causing the children to run away with squeals of amusement. Even though they had been the ones to retreat first, the laughter was souring any feeling of triumph she should have felt. She shot the goal point, the announcer broadcasting that she had taken her dignity back, but just as she was about to step foot on the rope bridge to leave, 2 more similar announcements spouted from the speakers, this time not in her favor.
Team Red has taken Team Green's first goal point. Has taken Team Green's second goal point.
Roxy lashed her tail as she finally left the bridges behind, rushing to try and keep up. It wasn't long before she came face to face with her own reflection, as well as the reflection of multiple little boys waiting around the corner. Roxy began to fire at them, and they fired back, none of the shots landing. Roxy pursued them through the mirror maze, keeping her hands held in front of her to try and keep herself from running into one of the glassy panes. Even though she was usually warned by her own reflection, that didn't stop the mirrors from disguising themselves as an empty space rather than an abrupt dead end. Come on, she had to be faster. She was already slowing down, the oppressive exhaustion getting worse. It felt like the paint on her face was dripping down into her eyes, and she kept on trying to rub it out, but that only made her slip up and run headlong into mirror after mirror, causing loud guffaws from the children who were swarming the halls. I think she's getting a little rusty, one of them said, another replying, "Well, yeah, duh, the place has been closed for a week. She's probably out of practice." "I am not!" Roxy snapped back, glaring around at the various angles of herself. "I was still practicing! You guys you're just... A chorus of laughter interrupted whatever she was trying to do with the end of that sentence. She had to prove it to them. She had to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect. Roxy slammed into another mirror, letting out a flurry of censored curses. She blinked rapidly, readjusting the visor, finally stopping long enough to look at herself. Immediately, disgust curled through her. She looked so worn down, the lines of paint dripping from her muzzle. And her eyes were twitchy and surrounded by dark shadows. She looked like some sort of bug-eyed hobo. Roxy tried to keep her gaze on the floor, but her reflections continued to taunt her, the laughter growing thunderous in her ears, pressing in tighter and tighter as she squeezed through each of the corridors. And then a hand grabbed onto her tail and pulled. She yelped, whirling around to shoot at them, only hitting the reflection. Before she could go after them, another hand reached out of nowhere, tugging even harder, enough to pull out tufts of fur. She cried out in fury, but just as she launched at them, the air between them slammed into her like a brick wall and shattered. Oh, look what she did! Oh my god! Daniel and his friends burst into hysterics as she shakily picked herself off of the floor, glassy shards slicing against her snout and ears. "It's not funny!" she snarled, but that just made them laugh even louder. Her front claws dug into the carpet, a triangular shard lying between her two thumbs, reflecting her own face back at her. The visor was cracked, a sliver of her green iris peeking out, and the paint was smeared. They could see the grooves now, folds and wrinkles, and somebody grabbed a fistful of her tail and yanked, causing her to shriek. "Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!" they mocked in a sing-song tone. "Oh my god, you're gonna get in so much trouble, lady! You messed up the mirror!" I didn't! That was you! Roxy was on her feet now, every inch of her scalding with humiliation. "You made me run into it! And stop pulling my tail! That's against the rules! That's against the rules!" They mocked again, exchanging teasing looks of each other. Right now, Roxy was sitting with her back to a corner, both the left and right paths plugged up by Daniel and his friends. Their mouths were gaped open in laughter, eyes gleaming as they slowly began to close in on her. She tried to shoot at them, but they returned fire almost immediately, easily deactivating her blaster, giving them an entire minute to do whatever they wanted. Because, of course, no matter how annoying they were, her program prevented her from harming children. They prowled closer and closer, and she immediately tried to fix her posture so she didn't look as bothered as she really was, forcefully straightening herself up to her fullest height. One of them darted forward and made a grab for her tail, but when she snatched it away from them, another from the other side grabbed it and tugged. "Hey!" She pulled it out of their grasp, her back pressed into a corner, trying to keep her ears tall and proud. "Don't do that! We're playing laser tag! Go get one of the goal points, idiots!" "Why are you getting so worked up about it, Foxy?" one of them retorted. "We're just playing around." Another pull made her slip on one of the glass shards as she tried to press herself further into the corner. "Stop!" No matter how much command she put into her voice, they only responded with laughter. They just kept on sneaking closer and closer, her inner mechanisms thudding louder and louder in her ears, her fluffed-out fur trapping the blistering heat, each intake of breath tighter and shallower than the last. They were laughing. They were laughing at her. She couldn't get them to stop. She needed to get away. She needed to get away, get away, get away, get away! Roxy turned and leaped, digging her claws into the top of the wall. She heaved herself up, their sticky fingers finally ripped out of her fur as she crawled out of reach. She clung to the top of the wall, turning to look back down at them, a swarm of laughter still reaching her even though they couldn't jump high enough to get to her. Hey, that's cheating! Where are you going, Foxy? I thought we were having fun! At this point, Roxy didn't care to respond to them. The panic was so severe she felt like she was going to die, her entire body racked with sobs as she turned and leaped. She touched down at the top of the next wall, out of sight. She jumped to the next and the next, her claws scrabbling against the tops of the mirrors, bending around a pointed corner, leaping to the next one, the children's teasing laughter rising through the air and descending on her like a storm cloud. She had to get away. She had to get away. Her fatigue caught up to her even quicker than the kids could, each step getting clunkier than the last, unable to fully extend each limb without trembling uncontrollably. She dug her green claws into the plasticky substance of the wall beneath her, gasping for breath, her vision doubling and then tripling, everything seeming to blur and drag slower and slower, tipping to one side. Then she saw it. The various goal points were set up around the vast arena, cylinders tipped with bright lights that signified which team had claimed them. She could see all of them at once from up here. A part of her knew that climbing the walls was cheating, but if she couldn't use her X-ray eyes, she was going to do this instead. She just wanted them to stop laughing. Roxy made her way to the closest one, the one with the section with the obstacle courses. She didn't have to go very far before her blaster was close enough to change it from red to green.
Team Green has taken Team Red's first goal point.
A spark of energy rose in her at that small victory, but she was not done yet. She continued working her way around the walls, listening to the kids trying to track her down and shoot her to disable the blaster again. Roxy straightened her ears, waiting for them to get upset like she had been. She wanted them to start crying like she did once they realized that they were losing. But instead, they were just giggling madly, just as loudly as they had been when she was the one that was falling behind. She grinded her teeth and took several leaps across the top of the walls. She only barely landed the last one, her toes slipping off and letting her left knee bang harshly into the corner. She blinked rapidly and shook her head, but the movement only disoriented her further, everything beginning to creak in the wrong direction. Stop it, stop! Just win the game, it's not that hard, keep going! She managed to shoot the goal point. The next one. Find the next one. The twilight-colored armor that she wore felt as if it was made of lead. Her ankles were loose with every step, forcing her to throw her arms out to keep herself upright. Her tail, which was usually supposed to correct her balance, was pulsing with pain from how rough the kids had been on her, meaning that it was not really much help at the moment. Red. She was seeing red. Everything was blurry and red. She was so tired. Everything began to slow down. She slowed down too. It had been so long since she had slept, and she was really starting to feel it now. She just wanted to close her eyes for just a little bit. There she is! She kicked off from the wall, but almost immediately slipped. She yelped, gripping on tight, but before she could recover, her markings flashed red to signify that she had been hit. Stop it! She hissed at them, catching a flash of them covering their mouths and pointing, snickering, and nudging each other to look. She turned, aiming to jump to the next wall, but her feet didn't drag themselves up fast enough. Her downward thrust focused on empty air instead. She crashed to the floor, the impact stunning her as she floundered around, trying to regain her bearings. The kids were just howling with laughter now, the sound like daggers being twisted into her ears. Get up, she tried to tell herself. She just had to get up. She had to get up and keep going. She had to win. Roxy pushed with her legs, but the side of her head smacked against the floor, bringing the rest of her down. She gasped on the pitch-black carpet, the smell of rubber and sweat soaking her, the world lopsided in her eyes as she tried to find the strength to get up. She dug her claws into the wall, her back creaking awfully as she dragged the rest of herself up. Stop breathing so hard. Focus. Win. There was only one more goal point. The sound of laughter narrowed in on the right. The kids, she could see the faint outlines of their shadows. They were about to find her and chase her down again. Roxy burst up into a sprint, one that swung her weight wildly in the wrong direction. A corner clobbered her shoulder, her feet smacking into her calves every time she yanked a new foot up to take another step. Come on, faster, get to the goal point. The final one was in the section with the thick obstacle courses, and she didn't hesitate to dig her claws into the foam and heave herself up onto the walls again. Balance. She wobbled right and left, keeping her posture low, the laughter pursuing her no matter how far she ran. Just get to the goal point. She leaped several more times, her heels only barely meeting solid plastic, the goal hovering in front of her almost. It was almost in range. Finally, she skidded to a stop, raising the blaster. Blurry, so blurry. She rubbed at her eyes, trying to level the blaster, but her fingers were jittering, begging for her to let go. She pulled the trigger several times, hating each missed shot. Finally, inevitably, the goal point flashed a brilliant green. Green team wins! The speakers played the familiar sounds of dinging match bells, declaring to the whole world, "Tough luck, Red Team! Please exit through the main entrance and place equipment back in the respective racks. Do not leave any personal belongings or waste in the arena. Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidents caused by items left in the arena between matches. Hope to see you again soon, recruits!" Yes! Yes, finally! Take that! Take that, you! Roxy spun around eagerly to see the looks on the kids' faces, but her excitement dimmed when she saw that none of them were even looking at her anymore. Instead, they were just casually talking amongst themselves, saying something about how they thought Max was stuck in the obstacles somewhere. Roxy's grin fizzled out into nothing, and she was left just standing there at the top of the wall, panting and shaking from exertion, and emptiness spreading through her like a sickness. And then she straightened up, trying to compose herself. She felt good about this. She had to feel good about this. She won. They lost. She should be happy about this. Roxy slowly lowered herself back to the carpet, fixing her ponytail with trembling paws. I am proud of myself. I'm the best. They saw that I was the best. Even though the rest of her wasn't reacting at all, her thoughts kept rambling reassurances to herself. I'm the best. I'm the best. See? Even without the special eyes, I'm still... The next corner she passed revealed Daniel and his friends. A few of them glanced over to her, but they were mostly just high-fiving each other and making their way towards the exit, leaving her completely cold. She stood there for a few minutes as they exited without her help, the world seeming to sway back and forth around her, reminding her again of standing on a boat in the middle of an endless ocean. "Marco?" she called. No response. They had all made it out themselves. She snapped her jaws shut, taking in a deep, filling breath and squaring her shoulders. She had to put effort into lifting her tail and ears to reflect the victory that she had just earned. She did her best to keep from stumbling as she approached the exit. "She broke a mirror in there!" One of the kids' voices floated through the door. "It was crazy! You should have seen the look on her face!" A fire sparked inside of her, and she grabbed the handle and wrenched it open. Barely anybody reacted to her presence, not bothering to lower their voices at all. "Wait, she what?" Pierce grinned. "She broke a mirror! She ran right into it like pow!" Leo smacked his hands together to demonstrate. "I wish I had been recording," Daniel added, hanging up his laser tag vest. Her face was priceless. I won!" Roxy stomped forward, doing her best to look victorious. "See? I'm not getting rusty. I was practicing every day." "Okay." Daniel rolled his eyes in a sarcastically kind way, like he was responding to a baby who claimed that they saw their toys flying around their room last night. And they were leaving. They were already leaving like it was nothing. Just as the last member hung up their vest, Roxy snapped at the back of their heads. And yeah, so there. Come back when you have a real challenge." Before she even finished the word challenge, the glass door swung shut, sweeping the group away into the rest of the lobby. Why didn't they care? They seemed to care a whole lot more when she was the one who lost. Why didn't they take it back? Why didn't it work? Why weren't they embarrassed? Wow, you are getting sloppy today. Pierce materialized inches from her, making her jolt back. You ran into a mirror? Seriously? Are you sure you don't need your eyes checked? I don't need anything checked. Roxy hissed, hoping that he didn't notice her inching away from him. It was the kids' fault anyway. They were ganging up on me and pulling my tail. And you were climbing the walls, Pierce added smoothly, making her pause. They had told him about that too? Dread began to slither through her gut as Pierce took a few more prowling steps towards her. He had that look in his eye, that horrible, disgusting look. Her confidence completely fell apart, her thoughts reduced to white noise. Do I need to use your collar again? He asked, his nasty crimson eyes getting darker. This was something that Roxy only partially understood. Pierce's creepy fascination with her, the difference between his punishments and the punishments from the other managers. He always acted so weird when she did something wrong. He wasn't mad and vengeful. He was excited to have an excuse to do something that he enjoyed far too much. She had to get out of here. Roxy's tail brushed against the wall, warning her that she had nowhere else to go in that direction. She began to shuffle along to the left, trying to look elsewhere, to act like the things that he wanted didn't exist, that he wasn't really there, like if she just ignored it, the situation would go away. I need to get ready for the next match, Roxy said, moving further into the room, just wanting to get away, to just keep pretending that he wasn't actually going to do it again. I could help you with that, Pierce said, a wicked flash in his eye. Let me take a look at you. No! She shoved him away as roughly as her program allowed, turning to escape back into the arena. Before she even put her hand on the door, electricity shot through her entire body like she had been hit by lightning. She despised the wail that left her mouth, but was unable to stop it when this level of pain was being brought down on her. His laughter rang in her ears as she wrenched the arena's door open, practically falling inside and slamming it shut behind her. Stop! She hollered through the crack in the door. Don't touch me! Okay, fine, jeez, it was a joke, Pierce scoffed. God, you're naive. Do you actually think I want you like that? She slid down to the floor, her knees drawn up to her chest, every inch of her tingling with discomfort. Yes, Roxy was built to be kid-friendly, but that didn't mean that she was naive. She knew what he was suggesting. Why did he always automatically assume that she did want him to... Your hair is all over the place, by the way, he called. And God, what happened to your eyes? Seriously, it looks like your face is melting off or something. The chuckling afterwards didn't dull the edge of his comments at all. Roxy couldn't physically throw up, but so many things were building in the back of her throat, she was certain that this was what rising bile felt like. Roxy opened her stomach hatch, pulling out the mirror again, trying to keep from whimpering when she saw the state of herself. He was right. She did look awful. The paint was bleeding together, dripping down her jawline, and her hair was matted and split at the ends, her tail the same, covered in sticky handprints with tufts of fur pulled out. She began to cry. It came onto her so suddenly she had no way to stop it. Though it was impossible for there to be tears, she watched her radioactive green eyes in the mirror as they flickered on and off, her ugly, hideous face contorting and falling apart. She threw the mirror down on the ground, not caring if it cracked or not. She curled up on the floor, shoving her face into her arms, trying to stifle the whimpers that were kicking their way out of her voice box. They were going to take Bonnie away. The moment that thought pushed itself to the front, it held its position viciously, everything else around it churning and surging brighter and brighter, louder and louder. She was messing up. She was messing up so bad already. And it was barely past midday. They were going to take Bonnie away, all because of her. Because of how ugly she looked, because of how stupid she was acting, because of the broken mirror. She wished that she could leave and find Chica or Freddy, but ever since she attacked Monty, they took the privilege of visiting each other away from them. The guilt of that began to drag her down even deeper, making almost everything else around her disappear. She didn't want to do this anymore. She wanted to feel something else, anything else but this horrible, unending pain. Roxy parted her jaws, closing them over one of her wrists. Just as she began to grind her teeth into the studded bands that were supposed to keep her from doing this, a jarring knock from the door made her stop. Hey, another group is here! Get out here already! Roxy lowered her paws to the floor and closed her mouth. She got up, placing a hand on the door for a moment, trying to gather her strength to look confident, to look unbothered and worthy and perfect. As she opened the door to do it all over again, she had no way of knowing how easily they could see through the dripping paint. Bonnie was upon the door in the flash of a second, grasping at the handle, tugging at it. It wouldn't open. He yanked, rattled it, pulled again. It still wouldn't open. Freddie! Bonnie cried, slamming a shoulder into the door, pain shooting up his spine from the impact. Help! Help! Please, please, come back! It wouldn't open. It would never open again. This was his tomb forever. He was never going to see anything but these four walls. His family had tricked him. The realization flooded him with dread. He knew it. He knew Vanny had been right. Unbearable memories burst into his head, remembering how Freddie had smiled to him all those years ago, telling him that he would be okay, just as he had now. It was a trick. It had all been a trick. They didn't love him. Ravenous darkness. Unable to move, unable to escape, the little taps of the rusted staff bots all over his body, dragging him deeper and deeper into the scrap metal, claiming him as one of their own. No! He began to scream in the present. No, please, please, come back! Silence muffled back at him. Empty, alone. They were coming for him now, right now. Vanny had been right. Freddie had tricked him again. He had seen how awful Bonnie was and now wanted to get rid of him. Freddie! Please come back! Bonnie wailed. I'm so sorry! I promise I'll be better! I'll do anything, please! Bonnie scrabbled at the walls, trying to find anything in the desks that would open the drawer, finding nothing. Let me out of here! Let me out!
Woo! Okay, so if you guys enjoyed the video, remember to go right now and like the video and comment about your favorite part. It really helps me out with the algorithm, and, you know, even if it's something simple like video good or something inside the comment section, it still is able to help boost me inside the algorithm and get the story out to more people. So I would really appreciate it. It's completely free and it takes only a few seconds and it really helps me out. So, anyway, I think that part 3 of Behind the Curtains is going to be coming out next Sunday. Again, we're doing it rapid fire because I'm pretty much done with Behind the Curtains, like behind the scenes. Behind the curtains, behind the scenes is okay. I'm pretty much done with this chapter, so we're gonna be able to get the episode out really quick to you guys. So next Sunday, at the same time, pretty much, we're gonna have the parts 3 out of 4. So make sure that you get to that part, because otherwise you're only gonna have half of this chapter inside your head. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say. Bye. I really appreciate you guys watching it. Thank you. Bye. Love you guys. Woo.